Yes, we are live.
All right. Venkat, do you want to introduce or should I just like start talking?
Oh yeah, just start talking.
Okay. Venkat shared a reading that was about the philosophy of a packet software package called Quartz for building websites. Um, I have used that particular package to build a new version of the YakCollective website, which is now live. And you should be able to see that on the right side of my screen right now. I'm happy to talk a little bit about some of the philosophy of Quartz. I'll kind of give like a brief preview of that, but I want to spend most of the time that I'm thinking like just walking through, what are the features of Quartz, particularly as it relates to our website, how to edit the website, and just some of the affordances we have and why I've made certain decisions. The intention is for this to be much easier to work with and more future-proof than the site used to be, despite still being a static site. And to be something, a big kind of roadblock that we've had has been getting people, getting that site updated, because especially I've been getting busier and busier over the last few years. The website was very, very complicated in certain aspects. It took a long time to build. And I think that sort of dissuaded a lot of edits. So I'm hoping that this is now a lot easier and people are, just feel a little more empowered to just like, to quote the tech bro thing, you could just do things, hopefully not bad things, hopefully updating the website things. So the philosophy of Quartz. Quartz here is a platform. You'll notice if you were all familiar with Obsidian and some of the ecosystem around this, it looks a lot like Obsidian Publish. It was actually originally designed as sort of an open source replacement for Obsidian Publish. So it has a lot of the same features, it has a lot of the same look, and it was Obsidian flavored markdown files were a first-class citizen from the beginning in this. So it meant it supported things like wiki links, embeds, things like that. We don't use a lot of those features because I wanted to keep compatibility very, very broad and not force somebody to use Obsidian. But I used Obsidian in the process of translating all of our files. And you can actually open this vault if you clone it locally as an Obsidian vault and get a pre-configured vault with a lot of plugins. I know Jenna had already started looking at that and had run into a little bit of a snag, so I'll walk through that a little bit more. What you see on the left actually here is the Obsidian vault that's been open. This is the README file, but if I switch over to the index, you can see basically this index file and Obsidian is what becomes this homepage in the YakCollective website. So not exactly the same, but it's a pretty close to sort of, it's probably as close as we can reasonably get to sort of a WYSIWYG sort of thing. So the philosophy of Quartz has been, originally Obsidian Publish, and so it builds off of the philosophy of Obsidian, which is very much this idea that you should own your data, and that data should be in formats that are sort of forward compatible. In Obsidian's case, this means things are in plain text markdown files. Obsidian does have some markdown extensions to them, but they are relatively minor in the scheme of things, and you don't have to use them. Obsidian now supports a thing called Canvas as well, which gives you JSON files that define like big graph structures. Quartz doesn't support those right now, though I know that that is on the roadmap. While Quartz originally supported Obsidian, and so this philosophy of you own your data, it's since expanded a lot. So it initially added GitHub flavored markdown, because that's very, very common, and pretty much everybody hosts, including ourselves, kind of hosts their site in GitHub these days. So that is also very, very well supported. It supports a thing called OxHugo markdown, which if you use Emacs, you probably have heard of. If you haven't, don't worry about it. It's not important. They also recently added support for Rome flavored markdown, but that is very, very early on, and it doesn't support a lot of the features that Roam supports right now. But that is something that's kind of getting added. We are using a version of Markdown that is almost GitHub flavored Markdown. So that's just like straight Markdown, and then it has some additions like checkboxes, and then callouts, which are these kind of colored boxes. The only differences that we have with GitHub flavored Markdown and what we're using is that we have some custom callouts defined that are not supported natively by GitHub. But have the same look and feel to them. So that's kind of the background.
What is call out here? I don't see any call out.
So call out is what, or GitHub calls them alerts, is what this box is, where it says composable and distributed systems, Yak Rover, or over here, you can see the way it looks is you'll see it's basically a block quote with a special first line. In our case, we have a custom one called study group. So it's bang study group. And then you can have an optional title to it. And then whatever comes afterwards is the content of the call out. GitHub calls these alerts and has some called like, let's see, I don't have that pulled up, but if we look for it, I'm pretty sure, we can find GitHub's.
Oh, it's like a note, highlighted note.
Yeah. Not finding it right away, but yeah, it's just a highlighted note. So I can just make the edit over here. So one that GitHub supports is you say something like note, and then you say this is a note. And you'll notice it looks like this. And then actually when that renders on GitHub, GitHub will recognize that and render a special box. So some of the advantages we get, like I said, I think this is a lot easier. We've removed pretty much, in fact, all of the Jekyll-isms. So you don't really need to know any liquid syntax. There's nothing special really going on with the header, with the exception of these. There's title and dates in headers, but otherwise nothing particularly special going on. So that's a lot easier to edit. I'll be talking about how to edit things in a moment. The site itself is much, much faster. So you'll notice, so we're here. I can go over, take a look at the YakCollective garage, just loads up. If I want to go back, look at the study groups list, this is all we have defined right now. There's a nice little graph here that you can kind of zoom into. It's a little bit messy here with all of the titles. Looks a lot better when you're sort of out, but you can kind of see the connections as you hover over them. It tells you what the pages are. So you can kind of see how things are connected on the website. We have search. So if you click on the search, you get a search, and I can say, look for Rover, pulls up everything that has rovers. This is client-side search, actually. This is not a service that we are subscribed to. So this is all getting there. And so once you find what you want, like let's say we want to look at the Yak trails, you can preview it here and scroll, or you can just click on it and it just goes to the page. You'll notice Yak trails, Yak talk. One thing I've actually done is I've pulled in all of the old newsletters. So these are now archived as Markdown files. I was part of this project. We've got kind of the full list of everything down here. We've still got the Join Us page here, much simplified. This hooks into Netlify forms. So not doing NAC anymore. That'll save us a nice chunk of change.
So it just stores the email in some Netlify database. Yeah,
Netlify has a sort of a temporary database. So one thing, and I'm doing this right now, anybody who has access, if I disappear, anybody who has access to Netlify can do this, is that Netlify is not really designed to be queryable or long-time storage. So the idea would be, once a month, once every couple months, somebody just goes in there, downloads the stuff for our archival purposes, clears out the list. We're not saving that much, just email, professional name, time's out. If you sign up here, we can do testy at, that's just my website. testy testerson. Let's say they are at TC7. We just say submit. That just takes us to a page with the Discord join link right there. There's also automatic themes. So if you went there and you had dark mode configured, you would have seen this at first. But you can click to switch themes, and it will remember what your theme was.
Nathan, a quick question about are you less concerned these days about bad actors hitting that form and just doing bad things?
So I'll be honest, like the main concern with that, I mean, we were getting a lot of pollution in NAC. That's gone down a lot. We may see more of that. The pollution of the forms doesn't really concern me too much. Like it's bad data, it's a little bit annoying. What really has always concerned me is the fact that we just sort of have this open join mechanism. That hasn't been a problem yet, and honestly, probably the fact that Roam is completely open is more of a concern. I'm really surprised we haven't had people trying to put spam on our Roam page yet, but you know, I guess we cross that bridge when we come to it.
And kicking people out of Discord is actually easy, should that suddenly become the thing. Yeah, thanks. I just was wondering. Mm-hmm.
And if that becomes a thing, like we can come back here. This is actually just a regular page. It's just way off and not linked to anything. Like this is a Discord link. We could just kill this link. And then this is just another markdown file. Like this page is welcome right here. And so we could kill this link, create a new one, drop it in here. Or if we decided we needed a different setup, if we wanted to come over here and change this to an embed. So this is actually what's going on here. Is like this is just some HTML that's embedded in there. That's how that form is. So we could change this if we wanted to start using like a Google form embed. We could just change this code HTML to a Google form embed. So we have lots of options.
Well, I haven't looked at it for a while, but Discord does let you be pretty bossy about what people can see or need to do before they can do anything on the server. Did you review that stuff as part of this?
I have not. Like,
yeah, me either.
I was trying. This is a big change, obviously, and I was trying not to change a lot of other things. So, you know, the actual process of like clicking on the link and what you have to do and all of that. None of that. I haven't touched any of that.
Yeah, that sounds good. Carry on.
All right. So I think that covers just about everything here. I guess you can also do callouts or folding. So you can do this neat little thing. And where that looks like is if you come over here, the difference is just whether you have a dash after it or not. Though, again, that's all replicated in Obsidian. So I think it should be hopefully pretty clear to people how to make that work. The only real difference here, the things you have to kind of remember is that because everything's sort of lowercase, just to make the links look nice, you do sort of need this title attribute on every page. So it doesn't say index up here, it says the YakCollective. Or, you know, if we come over to the about page, we want that to say about and with an uppercase, not about lowercase. So you do want the title. And then the other thing is some pages, like the Yak Robotics Garage, have a date associated with them. Anything with a date will show up in our RSS feed. Here. If it doesn't have a date on the page, it doesn't show up. And so that's kind of a nice way that we can decide what we want to show up and what we don't want to show up, is what has a date and what doesn't have a date. So that's the 10,000 foot view of the site itself. I'm going to move on to talk more about what it looks like under the hood and how to edit it. But let me pause and see if there's any more questions about sort of like functionality or philosophy. Okay. So let's switch over. To make edits, you obviously still need to have access to GitHub. This is public, so actually anybody could theoretically, make edits. But really, what is going to happen if somebody makes an edit is it will doesn't have commit access, is it will come in as a pull request. People who have edit access can make and commit edits directly. So if you remember, I mentioned that I tried to stay away from obsidianisms. We've got a couple. If I come here, look at the index, you can see that these aren't rendering because these are custom callouts. If these were GitHub callouts, they would actually render nicely. Not a lot we can do about this. But I'm not using wiki links or anything, and Obsidian is actually configured to replace wiki links with regular links. And so what that means is you can actually navigate around this GitHub page exactly like you can navigate around the regular page. And you'll notice that some things like, the form doesn't quite work there. But again, it's kind of mostly there, and it kind of gives you a sense of, how things should look. And that is not working. So that should be something maybe I fix in this. But Yak's Robotics Garage should work. Yeah, and there's the Yak Robotics page. So you can just kind of navigate around here. You'll notice that all these folders also have index pages. That's kind of what gives us, like, when you go to just study groups, that's how you get just the study group list, is this index. And it kind of doesn't show up on the regular thing. And so, for the most part, study groups are pages, projects are pages. The one sort of exception to that is Astonishing Stories, because there was a lot of stuff going on. So the Astonishing Stories is actually an index page here, with the stories themselves as subpages. And you'll notice here I have a little bit, you can actually stick extra metadata if you want into the YAML front matter. If we want to take a look at this. Just looks here. I've just got this Google Docs. This doesn't do anything. This is just, for our reference. So if you ever wanted to be like, I want to put a link here as a reference or something like that, you can stick that up there kind of for like that long-term archival kind of note to self sort of thing. So editing, I actually showed you one way you can edit right now. Like if you click edit this file, you can now edit it directly in the GitHub interface. And you can just type here, commit the change, and you'll get a prompt and to commit that to the site. Another way, if you want to have a little more overhead view of things, is if you hit the period on your keyboard. You don't have to hit it anywhere. It's just like on the keyboard. If you're on GitHub, you hit that, you'll notice GitHub reloads and you get VS Code. And it's not just VS Code. You may be prompted to enable some plugins. We've got a few plugins here related to Markdown formatting and a thing called Foam, which gives you some things like a nice graph. Unfortunately, graph only works on desktop right now, but the Foam developers, apparently there's a lot of people in Microsoft who use Foam. So there's a lot of interest to getting Foam sort of feature parity between the web and desktop versions of VS Code. But again, you can navigate everything right here. Let's fix that problem actually that I found. So over on the index, you'll notice, oh, here's why it's not working in GitHub, because I have just composable and distributed systems here, and it should be prefixed by study groups. So I'm going to just come here. I'm going to copy that, paste that in up here. You will notice that you do have to %encode things, like it's a URL. So the big thing will be like spaces or %20. I never remember all the % encodings. I'll be honest. I just look it up on Wikipedia every time. But really, that's the biggest thing is you need %20 whenever you put a space there. So I'm going to do that. That's going to be good. So I'm going to come over here This is my Git view. You can see, oh, here's the change I've made. If I made multiple changes, they would be listed. Need to add a message. So I'm going to say fixed CADs. Actually, before I do this, let's check one other. Oh no, I know it'll be fine in the other place. So say fixed CADs link on homepage. I'm going to say commit and push. And now it says it's fine. Well, what happened here? Well, if I come back into here, the GitHub view, and I look at my index page, you'll notice if I look at this raw, that update has now shown up. And not only that, if we look over here at the actions, you'll notice in actions that there's a workflow here for updating the website, and it automatically kicked off and is rebuilding that right now. And if you want to go along with the progress, you can click on that and you can see what's going. It's been setting up the environment. It's now running the build script. It takes about a minute and a half to build everything, which is kind of absurd. The actual build process of the website is closer to 20 seconds, 20, 30 seconds. But everything else is like right now, like it was installing all of the packages. Now it's already built the website. So 3 seconds to build the website here, pushing the website out to Netlify. That's all done. And now it's just doing some cleanup. Boom, the light is green, as they say. Trap is clean. This already worked before, but if we, but that source file was updated, and that just goes right there. So that's one way you can edit it. Is like I said, just hit that period. Again, if you didn't have edit access to GitHub, rather than it being pushed directly to whatever branch you were working on. So if we were on a different branch, like big changes you'd want to make to development. So you'd want to be over here on development. And you'd make those there. Why am I 8 commits ahead here? I have no idea why I'm ahead.
Does the build process also run on the PRs?
I don't actually know if it runs on the PRs. I have not tested that. So maybe somebody who doesn't have access to GitHub could take a look. My guess is probably not, because the build process, the GitHub workflows only work on your main branch. And so like they won't work on development, for example. So you can make updates to development, but there's not like a demo website there. So I would definitely recommend, if you are making updates, that you maybe would want to make them under the desktop using Obsidian, because you'll get a better view of what that looks like.
But the deployment is via Netlify, right?
The website is hosted by Netlify. It's actually built on GitHub. So we build it in there's sort of 2 steps here. We build it in GitHub, in a Docker container in GitHub using this automation script. And then we use an action that Netlify provides in GitHub to push that data onto Netlify. So it's not built on Netlify anymore, but it is still hosted on Netlify. So let's take a look at the desktop view. What does this look like on the desktop? So I've already got this cloned down. If I wanted to, if I wanted to get out it the first time, I do, a git clone, and then there we go. I want to copy the link here. That would give me to clone it. I don't need to do that because I've already got it. I do need to pull it. I made a change, so let me do a git pull down that change. I can switch over to Obsidian here and take a look. We can see, if I look down, there's that change I made right here. But the composable and distributed study groups, that's a pretty bare page right now. Let's add a little bit more to that page. Also, it doesn't show up. So let's come over here to Rome. Let's actually first open up the link. This is actually, the link is still the old blockchain one. So I was trying to figure out, when did we start? Well, we had the first meeting, it looks like, that we recorded on November 8th, 2021. So let's add the date that as a date here. We're going to say we started 2021, 11/08. We don't really do this page anymore. This is our main page. So let's go and copy that. And let's go and paste that in here. And we're going to say it's, I notice, has automatically converted that to a nice quote. Related, or we'll say it was created as a broadening of our previous blockchain studies. This was assumed until September 24, at which point it was in covers. Let's get this all in here. I always like to use tabs. You don't really have to, but and then I think we don't have a governance studies set up yet, but we can add that link later. So that's and then let's say you can read more about this group and our previous study sessions on Rome. And then let's link that page. We'll just make that. So a couple of things going on here. Obsidian, like I said, is set up to try to produce GitHub flavor markdown. So one thing is wiki links are turned off. That means if I wanted to say link to the join us page, and I say, okay, let's do this join page, you'll notice it actually converts that to a markdown link automatically here. And then if I wanted to change the title, I could come over here and change the title. I think that's the main thing. Like I mentioned, smart quotes. Though you'll get a prompt when you first open this to enable plugins if you trust the people in the vault. You should trust me, but maybe you don't. That's also fine. If you want to study them or enable them afterwards, you can go to the Obsidian settings, look at community plugins. You have to turn on the plugins. So turn off restricted mode is I think what it's called. And then here's all the plugins that we're running right now. So if you do want to edit it on Android, you can. There is this Android no media that just prevents the pictures from showing up in your media. Consistent attachments and links just helps keep things organized a little bit for you. We have emoji functionality. Folder notes makes Obsidian work like the website. So what that does is means that if I click on study groups, rather than it expanding the page, I actually get the index page for it. So that's what that gives us. Hide folders. What that's doing is makes this interface a little bit nicer. So if I unclick that, normally it would be clicked, so you'd have this. And if I unclick it, if I say unhide, you get some of this, like the private folder here that has like an original YakCoin asset, things like that. But probably want to have that clicked mostly just so you're sort of cut down to more of what the website sees. We've got some plugins to handle other languages and to help out with OmniSearch. Not really using any of these right now, but if we ever did have something that was multilingual, OmniSearch gives us a nicer search in Obsidian, similar to the search that's on the website. Smart typography, Jenna, this is the plugin that if you use Obsidian, you'll want to use. This gives us curly quotes, curly single quotes, actual ellipses, nice arrows, and M dashes, which I am always excited about, things like that. So fun little plug in there. I use this everywhere. Text extractor is used for OmniSearch. Unique attachments lets us rename attachments using MD5 sums. That prevents attachment duplication. So I'm using that right now. Again, these two are used to help text extractor extract stuff for OmniSearch. Text extractor also is kind of cool because it will also does OCR on any PDFs or images. So if I come over and look at like assets here, like it's actually doing OCR on this. So probably I'd be curious if I go and I search for power, see if it actually pulls up that one. Looks like it didn't find that one, but you'll see it's actually is matching some images here that it pulled it from. This isn't like the best ever text extraction, but it is all on client side. Again, no web services are being used here. So, and then also if you do add something, it'll get indexed automatically, and those indexes will get saved up to GitHub so that whoever pulls it down afterwards will have that advantage. Anyway, so I made that change to composable and distributed systems here. Let's get back to that. So now I want to commit that. There are desktop clients, there are nice graphical clients for Git. I could never get into them, so I always would just go and I'd say, let's add everything here. You'll notice I got some Obsidian data in there too, just because I was moving around in it. I'm lazy. I'm a bad collaborator. I'll just commit that all under the same thing. Bad me, slap me on the hand. I don't think it's that important. Do git commit. I have to give it a message. So better text for CADs. This is a thing I have. You probably don't have it, where I sign all my commits with a GPG key, and then git push will push that up to the site. And again, if we come over, take a look at our actions, you'll see automatically kicked off here. And this will actually be a better one because this is not just changing a link. This was changing some definite text. So while this is going, I'm going to come back over to Obsidian. Let's say we were adding a new study group. So Sachin was interested in the governance study, getting governance studies in here. What you would do is you would just add a new note to this folder. You could do that using VS Code on the web. You could do that in Obsidian. Not sure if you can do that from the web interface.
This new note is just a markdown file, right?
Yep, it is all just markdown files. If we actually take a look at this, for example, the CADs file, take a look at source mode. It is literally this. So if we take a look over here, you can see that this is exactly the same. It's a plain text markdown file. So you could even just copy the content here, edit it so you've got everything you want. For study groups, work groups, projects, you probably want to add a date so it shows up in the RSS feed. Then if you want that on the indexes, these don't get built automatically anymore. We did have to sacrifice some things. So you want to come over here to study groups and you want to add a call out here for it. And you want to then also want to go probably to the index page for the whole site and add it here as well. And I've tried to keep these kind of in the order that they were created. In fact, actually, now that we have a date for CADs, because YAR 2021-3/28. So actually, robotics predates CAD. So I've got these sort of in reverse chronological order. You don't have to put in that. That's just what I've been doing. So you just add it to 2 places. What I do is I just kind of add it here and then I copy it over. That's where I also screwed up, because when you copy it over, obviously if you're linking it from study groups, it's just in the same directory. But if index, you need to go down a directory. So you will need to, when you move it here, you do need to remember to add this study groups bit to the front of that. As you noticed, it did work on the website. Quartz is pretty smart and pretty forgiving about figuring out links. So even if you get this path wrong, it will probably work in Quartz and it will probably work in Obsidian, but it won't work then in GitHub, as we saw. And it won't work necessarily in other editors. And one of the points of this was to try to be editor agnostic. So you don't have to be super careful with links, but I strongly recommend you kind of have it in your mind about trying to be careful with links. When in doubt, if you're in Obsidian, you can always start it out by doing those 2 brackets, like it's a wiki link, selecting from the menu, and Obsidian will actually insert the correct path relative to the file you're in. So when in doubt, just use the 2 bracket process. Anyway, you'll see this CADS change is now finished building. And if we come over and look at our study groups, boom, it is live here. So I think that's really all I've got to present. I'm hoping that this being plain text markdown files, it was plain text markdown before, but it had a lot of that liquid syntax and custom liquid plugins I had written to get all those cool effects. We're not using those. It is a more plain website now, but the advantage that we get from that is we are just using, not quite, but almost bog standard GitHub markdown. And really, if we wanted to do something different from these callout boxes and represent these differently, we could make this standard GitHub flavored markdown that's supported like pretty much everywhere these days, pretty much every tool these days. And so if something happened to Quartz and it went away, we could easily move to something else. Quartz is an open source project. It's MIT licensed, if I recall. Let's actually look at that. So I'm not lying. Yes, it is MIT licensed. So I suspect that there's a lot of people using Quartz. So I think even if the developers decided they didn't want to do it, somebody would fork it. And I'd be very surprised if it goes away anytime soon. But this does sort of future-proof things by using those bog standard markdown files. We now have something that's just a lot easier to deal with. I will say, when I was looking at everything, I also considered could we do something with Google Docs or something to make some of the formatting a little bit easier for people, but all the solutions there are paid solutions. Sound like somebody had a question.
How do we render the website locally?
So yes, so you can actually render it locally as well. The README file has instructions about how to do that. And really, it's just, this is your special command. So build serve. What does that look like? What's going on? I'm not looking at the YakCollective here. Let's look at the build script that's in .automation to kind of hide it from you. Basically, all it does is it checks to make sure you've got some tools installed. It should work on any relatively, certainly any Linux system with NPM Node installed. Linux or Mac OS, you'll need to get both Node and Gawk. Plain awk won't work. You need Gawk. Unfortunately, there are some differences. There's a clean command where you can clean things out if you do big changes and you want to get a clean build. And then this just sort of, it copies the site into itself, uses this tar command to prevent infinite loops, does some link munging just to make things a little bit more compatible with Quartz. Copies the overlay. So what we actually have here is we have Quartz as a submodule, and then we've got this overlay directory. So every change that we've made to Quartz is here. And I've tried to keep those minimal. So it's generally just a line or 2 lines changes. And I've tried to not make changes, but unfortunately there were a couple places where we needed to. So everything, this directory then gets copied over top of Quartz. And then it's just built just like a normal Quartz website. So Linux, this works perfectly. Mac OS likes to kill node processes. So I will give you a demo here. Knock on wood that it works, but I will say right away, it might not work because Mac OS is really kind of hostile to Node these days. But I should be able to go and say, over here, we can do automation, build. Let's clean it first. Didn't have anything to clean. So now we'll go and I'll build and serve it. So it's going to think for a moment while it's copying over all the files into the build directory. So this sort of pause is normal. And then, yep, you can see maybe on the screen, there's a little thing here, which is npm installing everything. This is generally, if macOS is going to kill things, it kills things right there, but it didn't. Now it's serving. So you see it built it pretty fast. So I can just go here, localhost 8080. Load that up. There's the YakCollective website, full featured. And you can see as things are going, you can see what sort of requests are being made there in the background. So pretty easy if you want to build it locally. You don't have to do this as part of the process. In fact, all of the build stuff is kind of, with the exception of like the script and all, is excluded from commits because all of that is done here in the action as well. But yeah, if you want to change, like if you're looking to change the configuration, so things you can do if you want to change the layout of the page, that's in Quartz layout, defines how that looks. The links on the bottom, all that, you know, the name and the breadcrumbs, all that sort of stuff. Config controls some config values here. Color themes are here. All the plugins we're using and some configuration options. All of these are documented on the Quartz website. So if you come over and you look at like configuration, this talks about everything. And then, you know, all the plugins also have their own pages here. And if they do have any configurations, Assets doesn't, Content Index has some configurations. So you can see what those configurations are and always, you know, take a look over here and seeing how we're configuring them. Every now and then, Quartz actually has pretty rapid development. The great thing about using Git submodules is we are locked to a particular commit. So even if Quartz is like moving forward, you know, nothing is going to break for us. That said, you know, some of the things I'm doing are like workarounds to like Quartz bugs. So it probably do want to update this every now and then. You can do that. You do have to do that locally. You just come in here and you just go into that Quartz directory. You'll see that that's actually everything that's in Quartz. You just do a git pull from here. I'm not going to do that right now. That'll update it. And then what you need to do is you then need to go and compare the files in overlay, not the config and the layout, obviously, but stuff in components and plugins and util to what's in Quartz. If there's been any changes, Git will tell you what files changed when you do the pull. And then you need to like copy over those changes. One thing I'm hoping is that util will go away. There's a bug in, this is a bug workaround. There's a bug in util right now where everything gets an extra slash on the end, which doesn't break anything in Quartz, but does lead to situations where as you navigate around the website, eventually you wind up with like yakcollective.org//////study groups, which looks really weird. So I have a fix for that in there. Probably could commit it back. But I'll be honest, I don't really understand the Quartz code base well enough. Or TypeScript, it's all written in TypeScript. but hopefully that will get fixed sometime soon. And at that point, we could actually just go in here and in the overlay, delete this util directory and the paths from the util directory entirely, because we won't need that overlay anymore. But again, everything in here it's pretty much just 1 or 2 line changes, and it's either bug fixes or it's getting a specific behavior. So an example of specific behavior is OFM is the Obsidian formatted markdown. We've gone and added custom callouts here, because otherwise they'll just get set to the default callout type. Any callout that's not recognized gets just turned into a note. So these have been appended here, and that's really the only change that's been made to this file, is just so we can have those custom callouts. Any other questions?
I've got one about Jackie, who's behind Quartz, and that the first thing I always do is go look for a footer or who made the thing. And Jackie did most of he's got a lot of contributors, but he's still done the bulk of the edits. So how are you thinking about that basic dependence, which is we got a guy in Nebraska who really is the one building this thing? I know they have a lot of thoughts, but just like a quick check-in on where you are with that.
I mean, this is the classic, I probably can find this, the XKCD one guy in
I assume everyone know that. Yeah.
This is exactly what is going on here. This is a recurring problem with open source. I'm not sure there's a good solution to it. This showed up in the XZ security breach, where people can get overloaded and then sometimes bad contributors can slip in. But one advantage to Quartz and open source in general is that you can roll things back. Like if it turns out that Quartz has been Trojaned, like we can roll back the version we're using to a known good version. If we think that Jackie is opting out, we can fork it, or somebody else may very well fork it, because there are a lot of people using Quartz.
Or even just let it be what it is for 4 years until somebody decides to jump somewhere else, right? Like
Exactly.
it's in that sense, it's kind of bomb-proof, right?
And I think one advantage to removing the, if we go up here and we look again, at these markdown files, one advantage to staying away from Obsidianisms and particularly Jekyllisms whenever possible. And this is one reason I didn't want to move to Hugo. Hugo is also very fast. I've used Hugo before. It's great, but Hugo also requires you to embed particular codes in your markdown to work. And I really wanted something that was just straight markdown files that you could just edit with, open up in VS Code or something else, or iWriter or Obsidian, and it would just work. And that I think is our biggest, that's our biggest bulwark if Quartz goes away. We have very, very simple files now. There's close to bog standards. We make them, if we really wanted to get rid of callouts, I could make them completely bog standard markdown. And that means we have a lot of options for moving to other tools, into other systems, and for porting that data into other systems. Like we could cut and paste a lot of this data into, for example, Google Docs has markdown support now. So we could cut and paste a lot of this into Google Docs and actually preserve a lot of our formatting just as is, if we wanted to.
Thanks. Yep, it's a dependency, but of the normal sort.
Yeah, and this is part of Obsidian's philosophy, and it's also what I've started to think, which is, like, I'm a big fan of open source, but to a certain extent, almost the openness of the application is less important than the openness of the data. And the openness of the data kind of comes in two varieties. One is like, literally, is the data an open format? But then also it's like how well documented, and to a certain extent, how simple the format is. The simpler and more widespread the format is, it kind of makes it more open. So like Word is now open format, and is very widespread, but it's very, very complicated. And there's really very few good parsers out there. And so that makes it very hard to think of it as an open format. And even like the Open Document Foundation, what's used for Open Office, it's very, very complicated format. Whereas something like Markdown, like, you know, you could probably, we could, if worse came to worse, you know, the internet implodes and everybody starts running Gemini servers out of their garage on like little solar powered batteries. Like, we could turn this into a Gemini website, you know, with some, you know, clever Gawk scripts. So I think having simpler formats and older formats that have sort of withstood the test of time is I think almost the more important bulwark than what any particular piece of software you use is these days. That's my opinion. I'm sure Richard Stallman would disagree. Any other questions or thoughts?
Any special notes about how images are handled?
What do you mean?
Like, where are they stored? Like, how do you get images into the website? Is it just edit and throw image into the Obsidian file?
Yeah, so you could do it a couple different ways. We have an assets directory, and we just drop them in the. I've just got all the images dropped in the assets directory. So that's the way it is right now. It just add something to that and then reference it. So, you know, if we come over here, we look at the Yak Robotics garage, look at source mode, you can see these are all just linking into assets. You could.
So is there any naming convention?
So what I've been doing is I've been using this unique file names to name them as all by the MD5 sum. So this is actually the MD5 sum of the file. It was just me. We could have a different.
Do you have an app for that?
That's all I do. Like, basically, I just stick the images in there. This is what I do in my normal vaults in Obsidian. I just stick the images in there, and then oops, not that. It's P. And then if you just go and you just say rename only active attachments, that'll rename all of the linked files in the document that are not markdown files. So all the images, whatnot, that'll calculate an MD5 sum and then link it. It will not do that for files over 2 gigabytes, but GitHub won't accept files that large anyway, so I don't think that's a problem.
So is the name here in the link just an MD5, or the actual file name is an MD file name?
The file itself. So if I click on this, like, this is the file. This is it's, and then the MD5.
No, I mean on the file system itself. How is it named?
Oh, this is the literal name. So if I come over and take a look, you know, in assets, you'll see that they're all just MD5 sums. And indeed, if I look for that file, there it is. So it is literally just a file on the file system. It is just committed to GitHub. However,
but I won't have to do this, right? Like if I drop a file name, let's say a doc.jpg, then how
you don't have to. This is a meism. If you are using Obsidian, it is very easy to do because you can just use that rename command. But if you just want to drop foo.jpg is fine. Like, the only thing would be, again, you'd have to remember if you have spaces, you need to link it with a %20. But again, you know, when you're linking something in Obsidian, if I come over here and I want Obsidian, I can just do bang bracket, and then, you know, let's just start looking for this file here, put that in there, start typing in, oh, I found it, do that, and it just automatically will turn it into the right link for you. And if there are any spaces, it'll put %20s in there right now. So this is one of those things where you can do it with other things. I would totally recommend doing Obsidian. Just drop a file in the assets that you want to include, go bang, bracket, start typing in the file name, and then when you find it, just highlight it, hit enter, and Obsidian will insert the correct link for you.
But once it has been converted to the MD file name, we won't know it, right? Which file it was. It's like you'll have to remember.
I mean, we don't have that. We don't have that many files right now. Like, I know it looks like a lot. And the main reason I was doing that, and I do it for my personal stuff, is that the files are very much associated with notes. So sort of the notes tell us. And this prevents duplicate files, because if there's two things with the same file name, the renamer will recognize two with the same MD5. So the renamer will recognize that, delete, and then link the correct one. So you don't have to do that. Consistent attachments will also make sure that if you have eliminated all references, you can actually check and find orphaned files and then delete them. So it's just a way of keeping things clean. Those two plugins are just a way of keeping things cleaner.
So this is not a shell script you have written. It's just a Obsidian plugin.
It's just an Obsidian plugin. There's no like Git commit script or GitHub action that does this calculation. Is something I just did in Obsidian. You don't have to do it. I would recommend doing it just because I've done it, but like you don't have to. If you really hate the fact that they're all named MD5 sums, you could go in there, rename them. I would recommend doing that in Obsidian, because if I go here, click on this file and rename it in Obsidian, that'll actually change the name. So let's say I go and I name this, rename this YARG ECBD. We'll just call that. Boom. You'll notice that it actually over here renamed that automatically for me. And it's still, if I scroll down, it still shows up correctly. But then to show you how easy it is to change it, if I just come over here and I now say rename only active attachments, it says, hey, I renamed one file. I wonder what file it renamed. It renamed that one. And again, all the links, if you do this within Obsidian, if you do it with VS Code or on the web, you got to be like, oh, where are all my links? If you do it within Obsidian, Obsidian will track all of that and actually update that link in all of the files for you. So also, for example, like if I go and I rename CADS again, if we want to change the name of this group again, I just change this here, and that link will change everywhere within the, if you are using Obsidian, because Obsidian tracks all of that. So I totally recommend using Obsidian as a tool. It's just, you don't have to. It just gives you a set of affordances that make editing a lot more pleasant and a lot faster.
It's a free tool, right?
It is free. There is if you use it for business purposes, which I don't think we would qualify for, they do request that as an individual, you purchase a license. I think it's either $45 or $50 a year. And then it's like unlimited. It's totally honor system based. But I do that. I use it for work. I purchase a license because I want to support them a lot. But yeah, it is a free tool. It's not open source, but it is free. I suspect at some point somebody will create an open source clone of Obsidian, but has not happened yet. All right, I think we're a little bit over time. I need to get to work myself. So if there are no other questions, I think we can call this good.
Yeah, thanks a lot for doing this.
Yeah, and hopefully, hopefully Sachin and other folks see this and people feel empowered to just, we need a page, let's make a page, let's link it, and, it should just get updated.
I could almost see having a one-time event where a bunch of us clone this for personal sites, like having a work party someday to make versions of it.
Definitely. In fact, actually, funnily enough, this is kind of where this came from, my personal websites. So for example, Cardboard Iguana, I have subsites that are running this, and you'll notice it looks very similar. Like
Nice.
I demoed this and I figured all of this out on my own, and then copied it over. There's actually more modifications here. I stripped out a lot of the things I was doing when I went to the YakCollective because I wanted it to be as absolutely standard as as close to standard as I could possibly make it. But no, that you can totally do that. That's kind of what I do.
Yeah, the perfect reason to play at YakCollective, to have someplace useful to use something that you built.
Yeah, well, and this is also the whole idea of the build script and the overlay directory. Like the canonical way to do Quartz is to fork the Quartz repository and then to add your content to it. But doing the overlay means that now, somebody can just copy this and be like, oh, I've got this automation overlay. I just add the stuff to the overlay, and then I don't have to worry about Quartz. And it's this it's very separated out. This is my stuff. This is Quartz. I don't have to kind of worry about clashes and conflicts and things like that. All right. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. That's all I got.
Round of applause. Everybody unmute. Applaud for the guy. Oh, really wonderful transition. Well done.
Yeah, thanks. I will say I am intending to step away from this a little bit. Another reason I did this is I didn't want to be the one guy doing the website. So not only am I encouraging everybody to do this, like, please do this. I don't want to be the blocker anymore. I want this to be something where this is not a blocker.
Well, Ben hasn't said anything, but I bet there's nothing that you've done that would be tricky for him or Anuraj for that matter.
The truth is, I'm not actually great at web dev.
Well, the point is, you shouldn't need to be. You should just be able to, as long as you can write Markdown files, you should be able to do this. Hopefully.
Yeah. I've set myself a small goal of just editing a Markdown file directly in GitHub. So I'm going to at least try and do that for the composable and distributed systems page. And I think, even that's like a huge leap over the previous situation where we had to ask you for those things. So anyway, yeah, perfect. Thanks.
Okay, I really do have to leave now. It's like almost quarter after. But
thanks, everybody.
Yeah,
yep.
Thank you.
Cheers. See everybody next week.
See y'all.
Bye.